Hey, good morning. Let's go over today's trade plan. So in the overnight session, we saw that ES balanced on very light volume above the previous VPOC, and buyers continue to be dominant in this market. Heading into the open, we're going to keep an eye on the previous close of 2117 and yesterday's high of 18.5. Holding above it would indicate continuation, and then above here, the primary resistance is at 24 quarter to 26 quarter, which also marks the all-time high. Now, we saw yesterday that NQ pushed to a new high on the year and actually continued, and overnight it's maintained the gains from yesterday. So if NQ is any indication, then ES is setting up for a test of 26 quarter here. But at the same time, we have to understand that the market is trading at a very aggressive price. It's very close to the all-time high, and with today being Friday heading into the weekend, it's very easy to get some profit taking at these high prices as well. So if you are initiating a long at these aggressive prices, you have to be very careful and cautious and manage that trade pretty closely because it is a very aggressive price. If you're long from earlier, then this is probably a good spot to take profit heading into the weekend. So because of the dynamics of heading into the weekend, I think that it is risky to initiate long positions at these very high prices, but it doesn't mean that the market can't go higher. Overnight, everything held up really well, and even now, heading into the open, things are looking more bullish than bearish. But from a trade location perspective, the market is just trading at a very high price, and that makes it a bit more difficult because you need that continued momentum in your favor to push the market higher, and that's the only time where the trade makes sense. Whereas, if you're buying a pullback, if you're getting in at decent location, at least, you can manage that trade a bit better, and you can play defense correctly as opposed to, if you're buying 2119 or 2120, the trade pretty much has to work immediately and with high momentum. Otherwise, it's not really going to be an easy trade to work through. So I think if you are entering long up here, make sure that you are doing it in direction of momentum and that there is some real momentum behind it on the upside. So keep an eye on the NYC tick to make sure there is some decent momentum in the market before you are entering long. On the downside, if we get a failure at 17, 18 half, and essentially at the overnight range, then we can quite easily see a pullback down to 2113 and 09 to 11, which is the initial support zone on the day. Responsive buyers can be active there on first test as long as we're not heading down there on heavy downside momentum and very negative internals. So we know that the buyers are dominant, and given the strength that we've seen in this market over the last few days, responsive buyers can be active on pullbacks into support. But if we go down on some heavy momentum and there's some decent profit taking place, then 09 to 11 does not have to shut off the downside. We can actually pull back even to 05 half, the open gap at 04 quarter, and the 02 to 04 area is pretty decent support. And that's an area that can actually shut off the selling and reverse the market back up towards 9 to 11 and 13. But the 2109 to 2111 zone, we can certainly get a reaction there. It is decent support first test, but it's not such a strong area of support that it has to shut off the downside and completely turn things around. And again, it's going to depend on how it gets there, how the market is shaping up, in the moment as the market actually goes down to 09 to 11. So right now, heading into the open, again, the buyers are dominant, but we are trading at very aggressive prices, so that's just something to keep in mind. The upside objective in the event of a sustained breakout above 18.5 would be 24 quarter to 26 quarter. Again, the all-time high is right there. We can get some profit taking on first test, and responsive sellers can be active. If Nasdaq just continues blasting higher and we see a big catch-up move in Russell, then there is potential for ES to go higher. There is no hard resistance above 26 quarter. That's pretty much the final level, final reference point that the market's actually tested. So above there is no hard resistance. But again, heading into the weekend, I think that it makes sense to be very careful, very cautious. And if that means missing a potential move, I still think that's the more conservative thing to do right now. We're in a market where again, I think that preserving capital is more important than trying to be aggressive and take every possible trade idea. And if that means missing something, then that's okay, right? Part of being selective and focusing on high quality setups means that you have to be willing to miss certain moves. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to be selective, right? So it's inherent in a methodology where you're trying to be selective that you are going to miss certain moves, and that's part of it. So I think as long as you don't have that fear of missing out, you can do well even in this type of market. But if you're always afraid of missing the next possible swing, then you're just going to have more variance in your performance, and which is not a problem as long as you're prepared for it. So just know what type of trade you're taking, and then you'll manage it accordingly. So again, heading into the open, buy side dominant, key inflection point, 24 quarter, 26 quarter, key resistance, and overall heading into the weekend. So not really expecting a whole lot from the market today, especially on the upside. The risk is there in the event of a downside move. 09 to 11 is not really a big deal. Pulling back to 21.13 or 09 to 11, I mean, that would be a very minor pullback in this upswing. And even 02 to 04 would not change the bullish structure of this market. And then that's a pretty key zone where buyers can defend. So those are our main thoughts. Let's see how well the market holds up this morning, and we'll take it from there.